It was hard. It was a hard environment to learn out of, but you develop a lot of thick skin and you learn a lot about yourself. And I think that the biggest learning that I had was that I could do it. Right, I can get on the phone with somebody and I can get them through, the who, what, when, where, why, and ultimately set up a meeting, which was always the end goal. So I actually thought it was one of my friends that was prank calling me,
Mm.
pretending to be James Duthie. And I actually swore, I when he said it's James Duthie, and I said F off, and he said, no, it's actually James Duthie, and I need you to stop emailing me. And then he laughed, and we had a kind of a laugh about it. And then he invited me down to the station, go and practice your pitch and present to your colleagues. It's the hardest thing to do. I would implore
Hmm.
everybody here, if you don't believe me, take your narrative or your deck if you're in sales and go present it and pitch it in front of your colleagues. It's challenging.
Mr. Justin Vandenberg, thank you so much for stopping by today. Looking forward to our chat.
Yeah. Hey, Victor. Thanks. And hey, listen, congratulations on all your success with the podcast. What's it, like 10, 11 years now?
It's 11 years, and I finally got it to a point, got a rhythm where I can consistently put out at least 2 episodes a month. So
Love it.
thank you. I appreciate the kind words and thanks for listening. But it's hard to believe you and I have been in this industry together for pretty much, I'd say, our entire careers. And we've been a lot like ships passing in the night. Like when you sent over a bit of the research work to help me prepare for this, I was looking at this going, Jesus, look at all the different connections we've got here, all the different times we've kind of missed each other, even though we have met and talked before. But I'm really looking forward to having you today. And we've got some interesting things to talk about. I can't wait to get to talking about your early life, because not to tee it up for anyone just yet or to tease it too much, but you have got one of the most interesting responses about like where you were from and where you were born. So, but without further ado, though, you're the Associate Vice President of Global Partnerships at the Canadian Football League. I'd like to think that everyone listening to this knows what the Canadian Football League is, but we've got a pretty strong international audience as well, too. So let us know what the Canadian Football League is and what your role as Associate Vice President of Global Partnerships is.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Victor, and yeah, appreciate you having me on. Really excited to have this conversation. The CFL, so it's our country's top professional league for Canadian football, and we do have a distinction: Canadian football and U.S. football. There are some differences, minor differences, but there are some differences. We're the second largest professional football league in the world. We've got over 16 million fans coast to coast. We have 9 teams that play in our top markets across Canada over 21 weeks, all culminating to our national championship, which this year is in Calgary. It rotates around every single year. And it's called the Grey Cup, which takes place, I believe, this year mid-November at some point. I should probably know that date, but I don't have it off the top of my head. So yeah, it's what else can I tell you? We have the single we are the largest single day sporting event in the country as it relates to broadcast audiences, and we have one of the largest music performances, if not the largest music performance in the country, through our halftime show. And I will, it is sponsored, so I do have to say it's the Bud Light halftime show for the Grey Cup.
There we go. There's that organic mention right there for Budweiser. Love that. Earn media,
I'll
earn
send
media.
them a bill. I'll send them a bill after the pod.
That's wonderful. So, okay, but as always, we're going to come back to that later on. But let's go back to the beginning. So, I had no idea you were born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, but let's put a star next to that because you were born not in a hospital.
Yeah, no, I was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I was actually born in a car on the way to the hospital,
That's awesome.
and that's actually why my name is Justin, because the doctor joked around with my parents, and when they handed me back to my parents after delivering me out of the car, and said he joked around and said I was born just in time, and so my parents named me Justin.
Geez, so it's not like it was paramedics that get were you pretty close to the hospital where they could just like get the doctor out?
Yeah, I guess no. It was I was born in the car, and I mean this is obviously all secondhand.
Obviously, even though you were there.
My dad drove to the hospital. I was already out, and he got to the hospital, went to the wrong entrance. Somebody directed, which is wild to me, and somebody directed him away. And he said he drove across the front lawn of the hospital and got
That's awesome.
Came into the hospital screaming, said he needs help, and then somebody came out and got me. So
That's something you could only do back in the day. Was it in the 80s, the 90s?
Well, I mean, is it rude to ask my age? It was 1984,
Uh,
July 18th, 1984, Victor.
July. Okay, at least it was in the summer. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
because
Summer in Winnipeg.
when I was reading the notes you had sent me, first thing that came to mind was car on the side of the road, highway, snow. So
Yeah, no,
it's not as dramatic as that.
no,
But
no. Kept driving.
that's fantastic. Okay, so your family, you didn't spend your whole time in Winnipeg, though. You guys relocated to Burlington, Ontario. And what brought the family to Ontario?
My dad had a sports business out in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and he sold that business to his partner, and then moved to Ontario, Southern Ontario. Both my parents have family in Southern Ontario. My dad immigrated from Holland in the 50s, and my mom was from Canada. All of his family settled in Ontario, and my mom's family was from Ontario, and we just happened to have moved out west or my parents did, for a business opportunity, and eventually moved back to Ontario, and we ended up settling there.
What was life like growing up in Burlington?
It was great. I think it was a smaller suburb of the GTA at the time. I think since it's probably tripled in size, as most of the suburb cities around Toronto have. But it was awesome. It was I grew up in a great neighborhood, in a court with a bunch of kids playing hockey from sun up to sundown. 300 days a year. It was a lot of fun. Burlington's is has since become my home again. I moved away from school, came back, and settled here. Sometimes for family reasons, but mostly because it's a great place to grow up, and it's somewhere that I wanted to raise my family as well.
Take me through why hockey was a big part of your life growing up. 'Cause you already alluded to it, but I know for kids, especially, and I'm a child of the 80s as well, too. I'll throw out there 82.
Yeah, of
It was playing street hockey, like you said in our notes, until the lights turned off, was a big deal for us.
course. I think just any kid growing up in Canada, that was if you were fortunate enough to have cable, you probably saw a lot of hockey. CBC and Hockey Night in Canada was a staple in our household on Saturday nights, and leading up to Saturday, I think every kid in the country was pretending to hoist that Stanley Cup in their driveway or on their street or whatever it may be with their friends. It was just part of our culture. It was just, it was an easy thing to get involved in. I remember getting, my dad used to, fill up at the gas station and get like a free stick, like a Titan
Mm.
stick or, some other brand. And he would bring it home, and that became my road hockey stick until I broke it. And, then it was off to Canadian Tire for the next stick. But yeah, it was just a big part of our fabric growing up. It was sort of in our DNA. It was just an easy thing to grab and go.
Who would you say were your influences growing up?
I mean, on the hockey side, from an athlete perspective, it was Doug Gilmore. He just, he had the nickname Killer. He had the flow, he had the look, he had the vibrato, if you will. He had everything that embodied a star athlete that I think every or a lot of kids wanted to emulate. So, and during that time, the Leafs in the late '80s, early '90s,
Mm.
they went on a bit of a run. Didn't unfortunately couldn't get it done, but it was that was a big part of who I looked up to as a child.
Yeah, and looking back at the Leafs, there were a lot of great stories with the players. Like you said, they couldn't close the deal, but one thing that always came to mind for me was the battle of the goalies. It was like you had Potvin nipping at the heels of like Grant Fuhr at the time.
Yeah, I mean, Felix the Cat, man. He was a big part of that run with the Leafs. They were a lot of fun to watch. They're still, yeah, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I'm still a huge fan today. But back then, it was they were a big staple in my household and a part of my life growing up.
What about James Duthie? The TSN hockey analyst, sports broadcaster. How did you get to know him?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I loved playing sports. Unfortunately, I wasn't ever good enough to do anything with sports in terms of scholarship wise or other. And so I leaned into sports broadcasting and potentially a career in front of the camera. I did a lot in high school leading up to wanting to pursue broadcasting. I did a lot of acting. I was a part of an improv team. I was part of all the school plays. So the theater and kind of drama lifestyle was a big part of what I wanted to do. And in front of the camera just seemed like a lot of fun. I think like a lot of kids, you'd wake up and watch TSN Sports Center, and that was again a part of the fabric and DNA of I think a lot of people who were interested in sports. Wasn't like today where you could flip on your phone and get all your sports highlights and stats and scores. You had to watch Sports Center or go get the newspaper, and I did both. And so growing up and watching newscasters like Duthie was just meant a lot to me. And so one day I decided I was going to apply for broadcasting school, and I really liked James Duthie, and blogging became a big part of the internet back then. And so they would always post their email addresses, and so I decided one day I was just going to email them, and I did that for 30 days straight until
Well,
he
you were just cold emailing him for
cold
30 days
emailed him.
straight.
Just cold emailed him for 30 days, and then one day he called me. I would always leave my phone number, and I was in grade 12, I think, and I had a cell phone. And he called me, and I was telling my friends about this. So I actually thought it was one of my friends that was prank calling me,
Mm.
pretending to be James Duthie. And I actually swore I when he said it's James Duthie, and I said f off, and he said, no, it's actually James Duthie, and I need you to stop emailing me. And then he laughed, and we had a kind of a laugh about it. And then he invited me down to the station, and I got to watch at the time they were doing a lot of work with the NHL back then, and they did a whole segment tied to the NHL on TSN. So I got to sit through that, and then I watched and sat through a live Sports Center, and I got to meet I think Gino Retta and Dutchy and a bunch of the crew back then that were sort of synonymous with broadcasting and growing up. And he was really great. And we stayed in touch for a little bit, and which was awesome. But he gave me some really good advice just around the broadcasting and where it was going. And at that time, it wasn't just about being in front of the camera, which that's what I wanted to do. Was what else are you bringing to the table that's going to set yourself apart from other people that are applying to be a broadcaster or get into programs that serve broadcasting. And I realized very early on, it was great advice, and I realized very early on when I didn't get into any broadcasting schools that I probably should pad my resume before I reapply.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. First and foremost, between all of the theater work you were doing in school and the cold calling you were doing with James Duffy or the cold emailing, do you look back in hindsight and go, I was really planting the seeds for a sales career? Because sales presentations are a performative art. I don't care what anyone says. If you can't stick the landing on how to talk and present and keep people engaged, you shouldn't be in the room.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't, and it wasn't on my radar. It's funny, both my parents are in sales, and we joke about it today. It's people are always like, yeah, they're not shocked that I ended up in sales, having two parents that worked in sales. But no, it didn't dawn on me at the time. It wasn't something that I was pursuing. I sort of just fell into it. But what I recognized and realized is that I actually didn't broadcasting isn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a storyteller. And
Mm.
the nice
Hmm.
thing about being in sales is you get to develop and drive your narratives, right?
Yes.
And I've worked for a number of different properties where I've had the opportunity to shape those narratives. I've been very fortunate to be a part of the makeup of a lot of those, whether they be, organizations or products that I was selling that were in their infancy, or, selling legacy products like I am today, with the CFL. It's just kind of reshaping, that narrative or changing that perception of what people might think of it today. So that's what I really love. That's what I recognize and realize that I actually wanted to do. And I didn't know that there was this great career in advertising sales that would allow me to do that.
That can also be very highly lucrative too if you're good at it.
And that was that first commission check. I'll never forget it. My first sale was with a grocery product that I was selling at the time, and the brand was Old El Paso. So I'll never
For the
I'll never
salsa.
yeah, I'll never forget it.
Okay, and just one more thing I wanted to touch on. You brought up Sports Center. Do you remember when they flipped the switch from Sports Desk to Sports Center?
course. Yeah,
Like,
it was devastating, I'll be honest with you. I mean, Sports
really?
Desk was, yeah, for me, it was like that was what I was always synonymous with. It was Sports Desk. And the flip was because of the ESPN
Yeah. They
relationship that TSN had.
yeah, they bought into it. I'll never forget it. I was in university and I had a roommate at the time, and he was always up early watching it on his TV. We both had TVs that were back to back, and I turned it on and I was just like, "What the hell is this?" And he's like, "I don't know what's going on." He's like, "It was like blue and yellow and black yesterday, Sports Desk, and now it looks." To me, that was like the closest thing to a proper American invasion. Like it's just like it was a completely different show altogether. Still good though. Still love TSN, but I
Yeah.
can relate to what you're saying as well too. It's just like I find with everyone having the scores that they want on their phone means that you don't dabble in other sports or pay attention to things you otherwise would have. Because that's the thing with Sports Center. Because they would run, it was 30 minutes, and they would run it on basically like, I don't know, I want to say a 3, 4 hour loop from like 6 in the morning till about 9 o'clock. And it forced you to say, oh, okay, I don't watch basketball, but I'm kind of watching it now. Maybe I'm interested in it. I miss that about sports in general or sports TV shows.
Yeah, I think now you know, probably self-directed, you know,
Very
towards
much so.
the things that are going to drive viewership, versus, you know, being a part of all sport. There's also a number of channels that you can watch and partake in now that or shows in the morning that sort of, you know, can deliver that news for you, and all are going to be different. Some are going to give you more in-depth analysis, and others are going to give you sort of top level stuff. So, yeah, totally agree with you.
Okay, so you and I have worked at two different places at different times. Let's say so we have a bit of career overlap there. You don't know this one, but your first job working at Licks.
Yeah, Licks Burgers, Licks Home Burgers. For those in the GTA, I mean, that was the burger at the time.
It was. And okay, so finish this verse for me. Went into Licks and my heart stood still.
Oh my gosh,
To do run, 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 to do run,
that's
run.
right.
Come on.
Yeah, no, I was more the Licks is the place. You got a smiling face. What's the next
Yeah.
one, Victor? What's the next one?
I see. That's why I only lasted 3 shifts.
Oh man, yeah.
I
So
was a grill guy, and they gave us a duotang full of like God, if duotang. I haven't said that in a while. Full of songs, and it was just I was just like I don't really know how to keep up with this
yeah,
whatsoever.
we you know what, that was I'll always go back to that job though to this day. I still have some friends that I worked with, you know, back when I was 14 working at Licks. I was a fry guy, you know, before graduating to the grill. But the singing and the songs that you had to sing while you cooked actually made it a lot of fun. It was a differentiator for sure. And kids would come in and they'd say, "Hey, you know, can you sing, you know, this artist or that artist?" And we'd have some characters that would, you know, be banging on the with the grill spatulas and playing drums, and it was great. It was a lot of fun.
But the other thing too that no one talks about is that when they ordered and they'd pass the order down the line, it wasn't just like throw a burger on the barbecue. It was like they said a sentence and you had to finish it. Like I remember it was this is going to sound a little dirty, but it was like ordering a chicken and I had to yell back lickin' because it was called chicken lickin' the burger.
Yep.
And yes, I would screw that up quite a bit. Again, only 3 shifts. But apart from fast food, you also did a stint in retail too. So those are usually like apart from babysitting, those are usually the jobs that people are doing, their first jobs when they're teenagers. And so what did you learn about yourself in fast food versus working at American Eagle in retail?
Man, I think back then it was just about a paycheck, right? You sort of you put on the uniform and you went to work. And you know, I think for me it was you know, you learn a lot about yourself and quite literally you what work is, because back then it was, you know, as your first job you're not really sure what to expect. It's, you know, you get your paycheck and you're like, oh, I think I like this. But then, there, you know, there were hard days where you're missing out on things with your friends and so on and
Hmm.
so forth. But no, I think, you know, I think I learned a lot about just myself and, you know, what it takes to earn a dollar. And you know, some responsibility I think is the big thing, I guess, that I learned. You know, with that responsibility came, you know, came things that you could, you know, you could buy or you could do that you probably couldn't do if you didn't have those things, right? I remember I was one of the first people in my friend group to have a cell phone because I had a job, right, that could pay for those things. And so again, that's all tied to responsibility and paying bills and credit cards. And so I think it just, it probably, set me up financially ahead of maybe some of my friend group who just were maybe a little bit later getting into the working world. But they were great. Aside from the responsibility that comes with that, there was great friendships as well.
Let's bring it to your education. Georgian College. Why study advertising and marketing there? We've already touched on it a little bit, but let's get
Yeah,
more of it.
I still wanted to be a broadcaster, and I needed, I took James Duthie's advice to heart, and I thought, okay, well, if I did apply to broadcasting school, and I didn't get into any of them, I didn't even get an interview, and so I just got declined, and so it was hard, and I needed to figure out what I wanted to do, and there were a few programs that offered that I thought were sort of broad enough in terms of the scope. Advertising, marketing, communications at the time was the course, and so you sort of got to touch it all. And I thought, well, if I can go there for a couple of years and learn a few things that I don't know today, pad the resume, and then reapply to broadcasting school, maybe that will help me get recognized or noticed, and go from there. And what I quickly learned and leaned in on was that this is this is actually a lot of fun and a lot more than what I thought it was. And I actually don't want to be a broadcaster. I just want to be a storyteller, and I can do that in the advertising and marketing world.
Was that hard to come to terms with? Because sometimes we set our sights on something so hard that missing out on it seems like, I don't want to say a FOMO or anything like that, but like you miss out on it and you kind of have, maybe you have some regrets, maybe you don't. But at the same time, like the instance that you went through, where you came to the realization that that wasn't the direction you wanted to go into. Like, did you ever take a step back and go, I dodged a bullet because I might have gotten into something I thought I was passionate about, gotten all the way into it, and then maybe had a life and a career that I really didn't want?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I've never actually thought about it that way. I've never looked back at my career and thought, what if, or my, from a schooling standpoint, I've never really looked back at it and said, what if I went this direction or that direction? I think very quickly I just realized that this was, um, there was something here that I was passionate about and I could lean in on, and so broadcasting just became an afterthought. And again, it was, I always talk to my teams about filling their buckets, right? Like what fills your bucket, and
Mm.
because we have jobs to do, and that's not going to fill your bucket. So what else are you doing, right? Because you're gonna those are important things, right? If you're just showing up every day to your job and you're not doing actually the things that that you love, that's good. That's going to hurt you in the long run. And so, um, I was able to sort of, pick up on a whole bunch of things that I really loved in that program that I wasn't exposed to before, and was learning a lot about, and was very fortunate enough and to take that into a career that I love.
What were some of those light bulb moments when, like, some of the things that you hadn't anticipated? Because you had mentioned that the original plan was, okay, broadcasting school didn't work out initially. You'll go to Georgian College and get an advertising. You'll go into their advertising and marketing program, and then you're going to use that kind of as a bridge into broadcasting. But at what point did you realize that this was so much more? And you were, well, like, what aspects of it were you finding surprisingly enjoyable?
Um, I think there was I took a course called pitching the campaign,
Mm.
which was really interesting, and I took a public speaking course as well that was a part of it. It was more so, how do you show up in a professional space, and what do you do? And I remember day one, the professor asked for a volunteer, and as an extrovert, I'm throwing my hand up and I want to get involved in everything, and so he asked me to go wait in the hall, and then I come back in, and he said you've got 60 seconds. I want you to just tell us about your favorite movie, and from
Mm.
start to finish. And so at the time I couldn't, thinking on my feet, I decided to talk about the Mighty Ducks, and I just talked about the Mighty Ducks for 60 seconds. And what I didn't realize during that time was that everybody in the audience, and there was about 35 or 40 people in class that day, were just counting my pauses, ahs. And so from a public
Damn.
speaking standpoint, everybody, so then I finished, and he said, okay, that was great. And, they clap you out and you go sit down. all of a sudden you had 40 pauses, right? And so it today it's still something I think we all need to work on. I think it's a lot more human for us to pause and have your ums and ahs and so on and so forth. But those courses were very purposeful in terms of what they were trying to do, and it did make you think about your whatever it is that you were going to say next. Probably something I should probably work on today as well. Please, nobody listening, count my ums and ahs.
No, it's all good. We're not gonna do that. But it's funny that you bring that up because professional development, that's not something that's really captured in like degree or diploma programs whatsoever. Like people will ask me for like advice and I'll be like, become a good politician. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? And I said, you have no idea how much diplomacy plays into whether or not you're going to climb the corporate ladder, whether or not you can find a way to appease everyone and let people down appropriately. And it's funny because you bring up things like public speaking. I mean, we're in sales and that's not something they really teach us.
No, I would say I've been very fortunate in my career. I think I've had a lot of professional development opportunities through the organizations that I've been a part of, which have been awesome and amazing. I have I can think of a number of sales courses that I've taken that have been tied to either public speaking and or pitching or writing. All these things that I think a lot of us take for granted and we know that we can do, but professional development and continuous learning is something that I'm really passionate about, and I think everybody should be. I don't think you talk to anybody, and if you were to ask them a question, do you want to learn something new? I think everybody would probably say, yeah, I'm in, right? Or do you want to hone in on some of those skills that maybe you haven't looked at or adapted in a long time? And so um, yeah, I think it's you're right. It's not something that we focus on for a variety of reasons, but I will say I've been very fortunate through my career to get exposed to a lot of different things.
Do you ever like try to learn by example? Like say for example when it comes to public speaking, something that I've done to help myself is I will find people who I think are very good at public speaking and
Mm,
if they've got YouTube videos, I will watch them over and over again. Like even if I can recite everything they're saying like front to back, I will still go back and watch it, and usually if I'm going into a pitch meeting, not all of them, but a very, very big important pitch meeting, I will find a way to watch any of those videos the morning before the actual pitch,
yeah.
and I find that it kinda helps set a personal tone for me when I'm delivering it.
I think everybody's a little bit different. I personally, I don't learn a lot from watching. I think there are things that I can pick up from. I got to learn by doing. And
Mm, yep.
sometimes, you're gonna go in for that big pitch, and you're gonna come out of it and go, man, that was not my A game today. And that's okay. You're gonna learn from those moments. I think when you focus on professional development, the hardest thing that we all go through is presenting to each other. Internal pitching and presenting and practicing is really hard. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to be critiqued by fellow employees or friends or colleagues or their boss, right? They would rather go in and probably fail in front of a client than fail in front of their peers. And I truly believe that's why we don't do it, right? We don't practice enough. We don't hear it. They want to go and do things on their own. And again, I've been fortunate enough in my career where in a lot of the jobs that I've had and a lot of the institutions that I've worked for, that was mandatory. We put training in place to actually do that. Go and practice your pitch and present to your colleagues. It's the hardest thing to do. I would implore
Mhm.
everybody here, if you don't believe me, take your narrative or your deck if you're in sales and go present it and pitch it in front of your colleagues. It's challenging.
Well, I used to have a I probably still have a reputation for speaking quickly, but when I was at the CBC, it kept coming up. Like I was going for internal promotions. And finally, I had to say to myself, I go, look, a lot of people I respect are telling me I speak too quickly. There's got to be something to it. And I always equated speaking quickly with strong knowledge of the material, like confidence in the material. Like I felt if you spoke slowly, the audience would lose trust in what you were delivering. They'd be like, "Oh, look at how slow he's going. He really doesn't know his stuff." And so what I did one day was I turned on my computer, turned on the mic, flipped it around just so it wasn't recording me, and I just delivered my presentation to myself and I played it back and I was like, "Jesus Christ, that's what I sound like?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, they're so onto something. They're like, this is really bad." Like I was actually disgusted with myself, but it's little things like that you said where you just kind of have to do it.
Yeah, and again, I think a lot of people just won't. They just won't do that, right? I think you have to be a very self-aware person and somebody that is open to change and has those behaviors or demonstrates those behaviors. Um, that is, and you're willing to take feedback and address it and hopefully bring it to fruition and make it work. But again, I think a lot of people just they whether it's our society today or the job that they're in or whatever it may be. I think or maybe they're leaders. They won't. We don't spend enough time on professional development.
Okay, so let's go into your very first job after graduation. I love the name of this company. I'm going to leave you to explain what Grabertising is.
Yeah, so Grabertising was the product. I worked for a company called Orion Media, very very small media shop. It was sort of owner operator. He had a number of clients that he worked with in a variety of capacities. He did a number of different things, but he was working with a company called Grabertising, and they had just secured the inventory for grocery carts in a number of banners across Canada. So Safeway in the West, in Ontario, I think it was at the time it was Sobeys, and potentially one other banner, and it was the grocery cart handle. They developed a handle that could just clip on top of a regular grocery cart,
I remember it.
and we had advertising that was sort of behind a window on the Grabertising handle. And what made this one really interesting is during that time in advertising, it was sort of the market was owned by one or two big players. News Marketing Canada was the biggest, and they had a number of banners. And if you wanted to be in store, then you had to go and talk to one of them. They used to block out a lot of categories, and so if you
Mm.
walk a grocery store, there's a number of yogurt brands that would love to advertise, and they couldn't. And so what I would do is I would go into these banners where they had presence, and I would look at where I also had presence because I was the only other vehicle that could get into a grocery store because it was owned by somebody else. And I would just look at who was advertising, and I would go call their competitors and try and get them interested in Grabertising. It's still, we did a ton of research on it. I think it's still a very compelling advertising vehicle today. I don't see it around or in market, but I remember the sales pitch and developing that narrative. It was really interesting, and I still know it to this day. It's I used to go in and sit in front of an advertising agency and ask, what's the first thing that you grab when you go to the grocery store? And they'd say, oh, well, it's the cart. And I said, and what's the last thing that you touch before you get back in your car? Oh, well, it's the cart. That cart is with you for on average 21 minutes, which was the average shopping. We used to call it a shopping experience. And how many times are you looking down at that handle? Right, we would use an average of 6 during that 21-minute shopping period, but it was probably a lot more, right? And on that handle would be some sort of a call to action, and you would get to that aisle. And anyways, so there was all this behavior and analysis that we did around people and their shopping behaviors, that we could then tie back to purchase, which was great. And so did quite well with that product. It was the only product I had. I was literally hawking it in agencies. I would be up and down, Bloor Street and Bay Street with my Grabertising handle, going into agencies, showing them, what it looked like, and developing my pitch. And I was 21 years old, and just learning the industry through basically a book. Right, it was the national list of advertisers. I'd start at
Oh, I
A
remember
and
that. Yep.
and and end at Z.
Okay, and can we just say that you were probably in retail media before retail media was actually a thing?
I know. When I saw it, I remember when retail media started to become a thing. I laughed a little bit, and I kind of toyed around with like, is this something that I should pursue? Because I do love it. I think retail media is amazing, and the troves of data that retail media sit on, I think, is second to none in our industry.
Could you imagine if Grabertising had access to like QR codes and
Or like
phones, like
purchase
smartphone,
data, yeah, like
but
no,
smartphones were a thing back then. It's just like, oh, like you said, the yogurt coupon was
yeah.
built in. Oh, the way you could reconcile that back and attribute it back to success.
Yeah,
Oh
and
God.
literally the only attribution we had was like literally sales lift. So
Mm.
where I had my Grabertising, products, I would do, control stores with no advertising versus stores with advertising, and I would just go back to that brand and say, hey, I sold more Old El Paso salsa in the 5 stores that had it versus that didn't, and so this works really well. We should probably double down, or buy a national and get invested nationally across all of our banners. And so it was a good pitch. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. As my first sort of sales gig. Yeah, I would say too, it was my first kind of real kick at the can with advertising sales and getting a good understanding of what that was. And to your point earlier, when I got my first commission check, it was it was life changing.
Okay, so sticking with this role a little bit longer, you had we'd finished speaking about just how important was sales training, pitching to your peers. It sounds like you were at a pretty small company. Did you have those opportunities for onboarding, or is that something that, or is this a POV that you developed later on in your career?
No, POV later on my career. I would say it was trial by fire, right? And
Yeah, it
I
is.
recently connected actually with that owner, 20 years later, and we had a good laugh about it. But yeah, no, when I would get somebody, I was hammering the phones, right? Like I was literally calling people in from the national list of advertisers, and I was in an office with him, right? Like he would sit behind when I would get somebody on the phone and I would sort of get them hooked. He'd be on my shoulder, trying to tell me what to say. And it was hard. It was a hard environment to learn out of, but you develop a lot of thick skin and you learn a lot about yourself. And I think that the biggest learning that I had was that, I could do it. Right. I can hang. I can get on the phone with somebody and I can get them through, the who, what, when, where, why, and ultimately set up a meeting, which was always the end goal.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you said. If you can make it to that first commission check and it's a generous commission check that reflects success, yeah, you can make a career in this.
100%, 100%. I think on the learning front, that job also got me into networking. I learned a lot about our industry and attending different events, and I would say that was, that's where I did my learning. That you pressure test certain things, you meet different people in the industry, and that's sort of what kind of led me into my various different gigs from a career standpoint.
How did the opportunity at Chill Media present itself?
Yeah, so I spent a year with Grabertising and sort of got a good understanding of the advertising media world. And my sister actually was she was working she was a bartender at a hockey rink, and she would tell me that the this guy who owned a magazine would serve him every week. He was playing beer league hockey with his buddies, and one day she was like, yeah, I told him, I heard him overheard him talking about needing more sales reps, and I told him about you, and I said, should I just come in and see him one day? And she's like, yeah, sure, he's a great guy. So I just like showed up one day and had a conversation with him, and lo and behold, kind of led me to a media gig opportunity with Chill Media.
And Chill Media, you had quite the eclectic mix in your portfolio. Like I'm looking at here, you were looking after Ticketmaster. Is it the website or was it like the back of the ticket stubs?
No, there was no commerce advertising with Ticketmaster at that time. So this was
Ah,
the
okay.
this was the backs of tickets. So advertising on the backs of tickets. So when you know, one of my favorite, again, another awesome product to take to market and rep, because you were using other people's IP for free, right? You were
Mm.
going into agencies and saying, hey, Juicy Fruit, do you want to be on the back of all the Backstreet Boys tickets, in the
I like the way
country?
you put it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and Juicy Fruit would say that's phenomenal, right? Those ticket stubs became, I don't know about you, and from a concert or sporting event standpoint, but I probably saved 30 or 40 ticket stubs from, when I was a kid, and all of them have some sort of advertising on the back, and obviously that went away with how we distribute tickets today, but it was a lot of fun. That was a great product to take to market and represent, but Chill Media was more of a print company than anything else. We were the magazine of the beer store in Ontario. We
Hmm.
we did we did all the advertising for the Golf Canada souvenir programs at both the men's and women's Canadian Open. And then we did ticket back. So it was more centralized around print. But after, I would say 2 years at that company, it kind of going into my third year, things were changing, right? Print was starting to die, and I knew there was an opportunity, to obviously leverage this, but to go do something else in the digital side.
Well, I definitely miss physical tickets. Like, would you take your tickets and try to get them autographed for a sporting event? Like, if you could find the player or the athlete later on?
Oh yeah, I think I have a few. I think I have like a Dave Ellett, Toronto Maple Leafs signed ticket, and maybe a few others. But yeah, no, for sure, those are keepsakes that you want to frame and put on your wall.
Yeah, for me, it was I'd go to the Molson Indy every year and
Mm.
still do. And they would have these big, beautiful tickets, and you'd have a big one for every day. And you could go in there and easily get it autographed by any of the drivers. But now it's add to Google Wallet or they email you a PDF.
Yeah, there's something about those big sporting events that I think is just like tying it to a physical ticket is a beautiful thing, right? You get your lanyard and your badge. I think all of those things are wonderful, and hopefully more sporting events bring it back.
And that and they also make it, or at least they used to make a big deal out of revealing who was on the ticket or what the
Yeah,
ticket design was going to look like, especially if it was a major sporting event like the Grey Cup or the Super Bowl or anything like that.
yeah, 100%. I went to been fortunate enough to go to three Final Fours, and during those Final
Oh,
Fours, they give you the big lanyard with the big giant ticket. It's pretty great.
you hold on to that and then you go back to your cubicle and you put it on the corner there to let everyone know, yep, I know all about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no, it's hanging on my memorabilia wall now for sure.
Okay, so you mentioned going to 3 Final Four NCAA tournaments. That sounds like a score employee.
Yeah, no,
So, oh,
absolutely.
and this is another place where we both worked there at different times.
I didn't know you worked at the score.
I was an intern in the media library in the summer of 2005, and I would go there. I'd hop on the train and I'd be there in the evenings, and I'd work it twice a week, I think it was, 2 or maybe 3 times a week, and I gotta tell you, and this was back at because I imagine you did when they were in the Hyatt, right? At, Blue Jays Way, and yeah, one of the best experiences I've ever had. Like, that company nailed culture, so tell me about how you found your way to the score, and did you feel like you had won the career lottery? Fin
100%. Uh,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
it was the best. It was, first of all, I was a massive user of the app at the time. So they had just launched an app at the time for Blackberries, and it was still in its infancy. And but if you were a hardcore sports user, you were, you wanted to check out the app and get a hold of it. And so they were just getting into monetization of it, and they had a website, and they were at the time they were a broadcast channel, so there was there was a blogging culture there as well, and so they had a bunch of things going on digitally. Still very much a broadcast oriented organization, and I had met somebody that we both know in the industry named Tyler Cameron, and him and I I think we were both reppers. He had landed at the score on the broadcast side, and we were both repping an agency, and we'd run into each other all the time, and usually at the bar below the agency. And he said, "Hey, listen, we're hiring somebody on the digital side. Would you want to come over?" And so he put me in touch with the director, and the rest is history, as they say. And I got the job, and my job was strictly on the digital side. But man, did things start to take off when the app launched on BlackBerry, and we were actually a part of the BlackBerry marketing campaign. So nationally, we were preloaded on all Blackberries, so which was huge. So anytime you went to your provider to get your new BlackBerry, you fired it up, the app was already there, which was huge from from an install standpoint. Um, that was a lot of fun. It was great. I again have some lifelong friends there, that I was able to work with, and some I hired, some are still there, which is amazing. And man, did that business change. I got to go through an experience, a merger, or an acquisition, I should say, and in selling our broadcast assets, and then being divided from some of those friends and colleagues, and eventually moving to the digital side of the business, and launching a new company called The Score, and then focusing on just the app. Which was great. It was a lot of fun. That was sort of my first foray into management and building a team. Making a lot of mistakes, but also doing some really great things with some really great people.
Okay, so a couple things to pick apart there. I've been through a merger as well too, and knowing what I know about the score when I was an intern there, where and just to give people an idea of what it was like, cubicles everywhere. You bumped into sales talent, you bumped into on-air talent all the time. Everyone would congregate together. Like it was just, it was really, I don't know. You know how they say you should stay away from companies that try to act like a family or they call you family? I agree with that, but I think the score actually cracked the code on that. Like, I really, really enjoyed my time there. Here, I'll give you a quick story. So I was in the media library and I was working with, did you ever work with Neil Walk?
No.
Okay, he was the media librarian, and he was like ChatGPT for every sport clip in the world. And what would happen is we would get the beta tapes, and we'd have to like from the night before the morning dump it. We would upload them. They would be no, they wouldn't be uploaded. We'd have to catalog them. So we'd be like, it'd be like, this person hit this home run and put all these details in. So when you went in and you searched for the footage, you knew what to search for. And like you'd have people like Greg Sansoni and Steve Coolest come in and they'd be like, I'm looking for something, Neil. Can you help me? I remember that like it was a home run. It was 2 years ago. And I think the outfield was green. And he'd be like, Fenway, this, and this. And boom, he'd have the clip like that. And my crazy moment there was I was there when Eric Lindros was signed by the Leafs, and you really get a sense of just how these media companies get forewarning of it because they were like, okay, there's a press conference coming up at 5 o'clock. We're sure we know it's Lindros going to be signed by the Leafs. And they would come to us and be like, we're going to have a debate as to whether or not he's an asset or a liability for the team. And they're like, we need 10 shots of him making great plays and 10 shots of him getting knocked on his head because he had gone through his cycle of concussions. And it was just crazy the magic. Like I know I'm like waxing very poetically here, but it was incredible. And in a way, it's sort of like for the rest of my career, I was just like, I've never really seen that magic rekindled. Like I've worked at some really good places and I'm very fortunate to, but there was just something unique about the score. So bringing it back full circle, when that acquisition had happened, how did you adjust to things becoming a lot more corporate? And like you said, there was even that division. All of a sudden, friends and colleagues that you had worked so closely with were like on the other side of the tracks now.
Yeah. So, I mean, from an adjustment standpoint, it was a little awkward. It was a little weird. The office was separated by a plant, and on one side of the plant was Rogers, and on the other side of the plant was the score. And then you would meet your buddies for lunch, and HR was very clear on not crossing the plant. And so like, and I'm not joking. Like there was
I know
literally
you're
a,
not
a
joking.
plant. Like it was hilarious. And so I didn't really have an adjustment into what I would say more corporate because I didn't go to the Rogers side. I stayed with the score side, and there was about 60 of us that stayed on the score side, and went to the new company, and eventually the acquisition was finalized, and we were able to move out, and we moved down the street on King Street and built a new office, and that was that was the start of the score, which was great. And so there was probably a bit of a weird time. We'll call it a 8 to 12 months. That was a little strange as the sale was finalized. And for those that have been a part of publicly traded companies, there's
Mm.
there's due diligence and things that have to happen, and so it things just you gotta wait it out. And I'd never been through anything like that before, so you were sort of experiencing things every day. But I was told sort of early on that, hey, I was going with the new company to lead on the sales side, along with my team, and so it was really just kind of waiting for that time to happen. And we kept the lights on by continuing to sell the Score Mobile. We still had a product that was in market, and millions of people were using it every single day. So my life didn't change all that much, other than losing a few friends and colleagues that went to the other side. But the transition to the new company was obviously very different, right? You go from this large broadcast organization to with that had rights agreements, and showing live sports, and we even got into ancillary content around sports movies and those types of things. To now you have no rights, and a mobile product that was effectively hadn't changed all that much, other than now we've launched on iPhone and Android, and Blackberries didn't exist anymore. And so that was the start of something new for me. Is very quickly realized you needed a team of ad operations and account managers and so on and so forth. So yeah, it was great. I learned a lot, and to this day, still have a very fortunate and very grateful to have that opportunity. And I have a lot of respect for the ownership group over there, the Levies who started the score and have ultimately sold it. But lots of fun. It was a great time in my career.
I want to go back to something you said. This, if I heard you correctly, like this was your first opportunity at a management role where you were building a team and hiring people, right? What was it like moving from a player to a coaching role and having to be a little bit more hands off with the individual contributor responsibilities because they're fun. I know a lot of people want to move up the corporate ladder, but that's kind of like saying becoming a creative director and you're no longer playing in Photoshop and you're no longer doing the photo shoots, you're managing people in spreadsheets now. Was that a bit of an adjustment period for you?
Not really. It was a dual role. I mean, I
Okay,
was
player
still
coach role?
there. Yeah, it was there was duality. I mean, we were a small organization, a small company. I was still very much involved with the day-to-day sales side of the business. I had hired one individual while I was still at the score on the broadcast side, who's actually still there to this day. Shout out to Jeff Glenn, who's the vice president of sales over there at the score. He was great. Him and I sort of handled the direct business, and then we hired another individual who took over on the programmatic side, which was something that at the time Jeff and I, thought we were sort of ditching this kind of small entity to somebody else to take care of because we wanted to work on the direct stuff. And meanwhile, I think that revenue lapsed us 10x over the next 6 months once the launch of programmatic started. So yeah, it was an interesting time. It was a dual role, but I was working with people that I respected, that were my friends, and we had a lot of fun. It was such a great gig. It was an amazing organization, an amazing brand to work with. It was hard. It was tough to leave.
How did the opportunity to join Twitter present itself?
Yeah, I knew some folks that had just started there. Funny enough, the gentleman who hired me at the score, 4.5 years prior to me leaving, when he hired me, I would say 4 or 5 months after hiring me, he ended up leaving.
Okay.
And so that sort of what sort of vaulted me into this position that I got was bestowed upon me when we moved over into the new company. But he ended up going and moving into the tech side, and he landed back at Twitter. Sorry, he landed at Twitter, and he sort of put that bug in my ear. And I think I said no to him because I was enjoying my time at the score, and then they actually moved in to the same building that the score was in, and so we just had more and more conversations about what was happening. And Twitter at that time was such a it was a hot new kind of tech product and platform. It was global. There was a number of things that were really interesting about it for me, sort of getting in on the ground level. And so ultimately I said yes, and left the score. It was, again, really, really challenging, but an exciting opportunity for me.
And was there a bit of an adjustment period? Because you had spent so many years selling alongside content. And so was that a bit of a change? Because now you're going in and I mean, you tell me, what was the sales pitch apart from all of the data that you could aggregate from what the social conversation looked like to, I guess, how that would help clients achieve their objectives. But like, was that a bit of a pivot for you? Because I know a lot
Yeah.
of people have issues. I don't want to say have issues, but they have trouble when they can't speak about content. That kind of goes away. I imagine you were probably drawing on a lot of your experience from Grabertising at that point.
Yeah, for me, it was, the pivot was, I would say it was interesting. I was still working, in mobile. It was the score was mobile first, and that was sort of the pitch with social at the time too. It was, built for the screen, and for scrolling, and the feed moves really fast. And so it was at the start of these feed environments, and we were exploring different sort of quote unquote feed environments that within the score app as well. And that's how people were using their devices. And so yeah, I wouldn't say it was a massive transition. And we, while content was important and was a part of all of our pitches while I was at the score, you still led with audience and reach and frequency and our ability to deliver impressions in unique environments. And so that was sort of the pitch. And so being a mobile first product that Twitter was, and in a feed environment where, again, you've got a ton of data that you could focus on. That was, for me, that was the interesting part. And again, getting in at the ground level where, they had just IPO'd, and so there was, this ingestion of cash, and I knew things were going to move pretty quickly. So there was an opportunity there to do some really unique things.
You had 2 promotions when you were there, senior client partner, and then you moved up and you closed off your career as lead client partner. So, how did your responsibilities shift when you secured those promotions?
When I started at Twitter, we weren't aligned by territory. I think we had some accounts that, some people were working on. I sort of had my pick of the litter in terms of agency that I wanted to go and work on. Like, it was still a little messy in terms of who was working on what. So the client partnership role, you sort of made your own with the territory that you were provided, and away you went. We did not have a self-serve side of the business, so you were literally talking to everybody that
Mm.
potentially had a dollar to spend on the platform. And we were, at the time, we were just selling promoted tweets. There was no images or videos. It was literally just words that you could go and promote into the ether. So um, that was sort of the initial pitch and product that we were bringing to market. Over time, as I transitioned from client partner to senior client partner to lead client partner, the responsibilities were always somewhat the same, in the sense that you had a territory, or you had clients. I think, some of the clients that you worked on just became more global, or some of the books that you worked on were just larger in nature. As I grew with the business and grew as an individual, so did my responsibilities. And so in a lot of sense, the revenue responsibilities tied to a larger book of business went to your senior client partners and your lead client partners. There was also opportunities to, have dotted lines into leadership, and you'd have opportunities to lead or present at a global level, across, around the world at sales conferences and things like that. So, and then there was opportunities, from an internal standpoint, to own projects, which was really great. And all of those things, you know, uh, those were responsibilities that were, we didn't have the resources that a lot of the other offices had around the world. So as individuals became more senior at Twitter, there was a number of projects that would come up that you could volunteer for, or you were voluntold to go and work on. So again, very very flat, very from an organizational standpoint, but also wouldn't change anything for the world. It was an amazing experience working for that company.
Were you also going in and speaking with CMOs about tweeting organically and having sort of a social media presence? Because I feel like when Twitter was coming to Canada, that was still a conversation, or a little, or these CMOs still required a bit of convincing to have some sort of voice on social media.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. I mean, we had individuals that would, handle a lot of those conversations from an organic standpoint. However, some of the large organizations that I worked with, and some of the brands that I worked with, they were, communications and PR were really important. So I handled the telco vertical, and I worked a lot with Rogers. And when there was an outage, you know, communication became very very important in terms of,
Mm.
how quick to market you could react and talk to your customers, and so on and so forth. So I was always the first call. Hey, there's a problem here. I need you to put me in touch with XYZ. So I was sort of the conductor of all things as it relates to their business. Didn't touch everything, but could always put them in touch with the right individuals, and that's sort of the responsibility of a client partner at Twitter.
Okay, so what brought you to 55 Rush? And I guess this was probably your biggest leadership role at the time, because you were their SVP of sales.
Yeah. So, after 9 years at Twitter, or 9 plus years at Twitter, I stayed on through the acquisition, and worked under Elon for about 6 months, and it was very clear that things were just changing, and that this was not going to be the organization for me long term. And it was time to move on. And so, I had met the founder, had known one of the founders of 55 Rush, just throughout my career. Had met him over several years, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, Liz, there's a lot going on with our business. We should have a conversation." And we did, and I was very impressed by some of the things that they were doing, and kind of what they were involved with, and where they were going, and the vision. And it was really just a consultancy conversation. He wanted to get a better understanding from me around who they should hire into a sales role. And we met 3 or 4 times, and I remember the third or fourth time we had the conversation. I said, "Well, what if this was me? What if I was this person?" And so then we started having the conversation, and pretty quickly got to a point where I could come over and join them.
And how does Plus 55 differ from some of the other roles you'd had leading up to that point?
Yeah. So 55 Rush. So it was, they were an agency, I guess, by name. However, they had a number of communities that they had built and cultivated over time. So they had, the Parent Life Network, the Student Life Network,
Mm.
and they were, with all of these communities, they were onboarding individuals from around Canada. They were self-identifying as students or parents or newcomers into the country, and then they were putting them through all of these programs from brands. So whether it be Procter and Gamble or Unilever or whatever it may be, it was really unique. It was just something that I had not seen over the course of my career. They were collecting data, and a lot of data that I knew brands wanted. And they just needed some help in sort of organizing from a sales standpoint, and really just getting in front of agencies and brands, and sort of telling their story. So that was my job, was to kind of redevelop and their narrative, and work with their founders and some of the individuals inside 55 Rush to spread the good word, and make sure everybody sort of knew what they were doing, and where they were going, and the potential for brands in the future. Um, Salt of the earth people, wonderful organization to work with, and they're doing some really great things in the market.
Okay, so bringing things full circle, how did the opportunity with the Canadian Football League present itself?
Yeah, again, the through my network, just knowing people, and continuing to connect with some individuals. The CRO at the time, his name was Tyler Keenan. He had reached out to me, and talked to me a little bit about his role there and what he was doing, and we had always kept in touch. And over the course of our careers, he was actually a client of mine when I was back at the Score, and he was at Nike. He had reached out to me, and just said, what are your thoughts? And I'm looking for somebody to come lead this business, and I'm looking for somebody that's a little bit different, that has more of the acumen or makeup of somebody that's been in advertising and digital and partnership roles, and can talk to brands and agencies and so on and so forth. So we had that conversation, and he sort of pitched me on the vision of where the CFL was going, and where the opportunity was. And I've been a fan of the league, and as a sports guy, with the opportunity to go and work for a sports league and help shape that, and again, bringing things full circle. Being a storyteller, developing narratives. There was a whole bunch of things that sort of checked the box there for me. And aside from that, they just have really great people over there, and I got to meet a lot of them before deciding to join and sign on, and said to myself, these are certainly people I can work with and build with. So let's go.
So what was some of the things that you like from your own personal experiences or your professional experience that you brought over to the role and to the league?
Yeah, I think number one is just culture change. I'm a self-described extrovert. I think something that I can bring to a lot of organizations is just a boost of energy, and maybe look at things a little bit differently from a culture perspective. So that was number one. It was just hey, we're gonna sort of change some of the behaviors and some of the things that we're doing here at the CFL. So that was the first thing. I think second was just a digital mindset. The my entire career, over the 20 plus years that I've been in this business, digital has been a big part of everything that I've done. And I would say that there's a traditional nature to sponsorships and partnerships that the CFL was focusing on. That was not a bad thing. They were doing great as a league and continue to do great as a league. But I did feel that there was some things that I could add on the digital side to the business, as the league looked to sort of progress into the future. And so that was a big opportunity for me, as well. And happy to sit here and say that we're doing that. So spoiler alert: later this year, you'll see a new CFL.ca, 9 new team websites across the league, and a league-wide app.
Okay, so let's talk about measurement because that's the big thing in advertising right now. And in your role at the CFL, like I've seen some of the sponsorship packages. Correct me if I'm wrong. Nissan is the automotive partner,
No, they
or
were the
they
automotive
were the
partner.
automotive
Yeah,
partner.
I
Okay,
think they left in, but like way before my time. I think it was 2020 or 2021 was their last year.
okay. So you mentioned, say, for example, Bud Light. Okay, or any other league sponsor. They come on board. They sign this massive sponsorship deal. It's not. How do I put it? Measuring different platforms isn't always equal. Like say for example, web space versus maybe having some of the digital boards that are in game versus some of the broadcast assets and so forth. How are you going back to your clients at the end of the year and showing them that brand lift, showing them what success looked like, given that you've got so many freaking channels that you have to manage that are included in those packages?
Yeah, I mean the simple answer is third party measurement. So,
Okay.
we partner with organizations like Sponsor Pulse, or Wasserman, or the team, if you will now. Relo Metrics is another third party that we use. We rely on third party measurement to provide us with a metric called sponsor media value, or SMV. That measurement spits out what the value of everything it is that they're doing, over a period of time, and then we associate that to spend, right? So the ultimate narrative that we want to get to with a lot of the brand partners that we work with is, hey, you're paying X at a value of Y. And therefore, this is the partnership is worth Y, and you're paying X, and it's a 3X return on your investment. That's one sort of measurement capability that we can get to. And then every brand wants to do something different, right? There's different KPIs against different programs that we have. We do have custom content programs and acquisition programs, tied to emails, and or donations. We have Pure Later Tackle Hunger, which is purely based off of the amount of weight that we can deliver in food across the league. So again, I think every program is a little bit custom in terms of how we measure it. But we can always get there depending on obviously what the program is. I don't think we're going to sign up for anything that we can't deliver on.
What do you do for creative inspiration? Because it's like you said, no two packages alike. Everyone wants something different and something
Yeah.
unique. But you've worked in creative jobs. I've worked in creative jobs where you have to brainstorm things. And it just sometimes you just feel like you're hitting a wall. I'm not just talking about your time at the CFL, but just like in general throughout your career. Like, do you have any sort of like motions you go through, or any sort of rituals that you have to try to get some sort of creative burst?
Yeah, I think there's inspiration from other leagues. I think that's what's great about being in sports and sort of being a part of the fabric of the ecosystem. Is I follow a lot of different leagues and a lot of different sports, and I'm watching different ththings on YouTube or following different things on social, and you're sort of seeing where sponsors are showing up. The introduction of virtual into our environments is really interesting. All of those are sort of is what kind of give me inspiration. But I'd say that the biggest thing is just listening, trying to understand what our clients' problems are, or where they have, why do you want to partner with the league? And, it's usually XYZ reasons. And then it's like, but we really want to get this out of it. And, there's maybe a core demo or a regionality play or something along those lines. And that sort of helps you, get a better understanding of what is the program that I can build for these individuals to do something that's, really different and unique. I also want to push the envelope, right? I want to do things different. I'm talking to an automotive manufacturer right now, and I keep telling them, like I drive a truck. I love trucks. I want to park some trucks on our field, during playoffs and Grey Cup. How can we do that, right? Let's figure out a way to get it done. Keep the integrity of the game intact, and make sure that our players and fans and everybody is we're not interrupting the game of football, and everything looks great. But what more can we do from a partner standpoint, to just either increase value or do something different that other leagues just haven't done.
Okay, speaking of something different, the CFL announced last fall that they're shortening the field, specifically the end zones, and they're moving the uprights back behind the end zone. And just so anyone listening to this is like, well, that's what the NFL's done. Actually, the NFL, they also had their uprights at the front of the end zone up until I think it was the early 70s. And the reason I bring it up is because after the announcement was made, I discovered it on Instagram. You saw the comment section, and it was mixed. Some people were happy that they had gone to shorter end zones and gotten the uprights just out of play altogether. And others felt that it was something culturally specific to Canadian gridiron football that they'd been getting rid of. So I'm wondering, you as a marketer, do your clients call you after to say, "Hey, we didn't know about the rule changes"? Do you give them forewarning? Like, what do you do in that kind of sense when there's something that monumental that's changing about the game and the brand?
Yeah, I mean, there was no forewarning. I think there was a lot of people internally that were NDA'd on some of the changes that were coming. We invited a lot of our partners to our press conference and announced that there was something big that was coming. A lot of work, a lot of research went into the decisions that we're making. What I would say is, the league itself is an old league, right? We've been around we're going into our 113th Grey Cup, which is great. It's built on legacy. We are moving the league forward, and we're focused on innovation and entertainment, and as a sports product, those are kind of two big things that we're going to continue to lean in on. We haven't made any changes to our game in 113 years, and I can't think of one league that hasn't adopted any changes. I remember when the NHL introduced their rectangle essentially behind the net, where the goalies had to sort of stay in their net, and that was going to increase forecheck and probably turnovers and ultimately goals, and that was their big bet, and that rule change has since stayed, and there was a lot of mixed reactions and to that rule that was coming. I wasn't surprised with the reactions that came. I think there's a lot of people that, again, as a bit of an older league, somebody that sort of owns the 35 plus demo. There's a lot of people that hate change, right? And but what I will tell those individuals is just watch. I think very quickly they're going to realize that the game isn't changing. We are still three down football. There's still seven Canadians on the field. There's our end zones are still the biggest end zones
Hmm.
in any football league around the world. Literally the only thing that's changing is the field's getting a little bit shorter, the end zones are getting a little bit shorter, and we're moving our uprights, right? So you may see less field goals go through the uprights, but I guarantee you're going to see a lot more touchdowns being scored in the middle of the field.
All right. Are you allowed to pick a favorite for the Grey Cup this year?
Well, I could pick a favorite for the Grey Cup victor, but I will. I'm gonna just cheer for the league and
Okay.
hope that this is the political answer. Hope that we just we continue to see some great three down football.
I'm pulling for Hamilton.
I like that.
I,
Great
I,
organization.
I'm pulling for them because in a league that's only got 9 teams, and this goes to show you how highly competitive the CFL is. Every team has won, I think, at least 2 Grey Cups this century, so from, like, 2000 onwards, and the Tiger Cats are the only ones that have been locked out of that. I think it was 97 or 98 was their last Grey Cup. So but they've made it to the Grey Cup a number of times since then. They just haven't been able to close the deal, so hopefully they can get it over the line, pun intended.
You gotta get yourself out to Calgary. It's going to be a party.
You know what's a bucket list item for me? Would either be Winnipeg or Regina, because when you see it on television, it's like those markets are all in. Not to say that the other markets aren't, but those two seem very unique with fan culture
Yeah,
and the stadium experience.
both are great and both have amazing stadiums. We had the Grey Cup at in Winnipeg last year. It was phenomenal. We have the Winnipeg, or we have the Grey Cup in Calgary this year, as I said, and then next year we'll be back on one of your bucket lists. We're out in Regina next year, so
Nice.
maybe 2027 is your time to shine with the Grey Cup.
Maybe. I was at Pinball Clement's retirement game though. That I was at when he was literally player coach and like assumed the coaching role and was taking the headset when he was and calling plays. But look, this has been a great chat. I know we're short on time right now, so let's bring it home with rapid fire questions. I'm really appreciating this, Justin. So you ready for it?
Let's do it.
Okay. So the campaign you were most proud of.
Definitely Bell Let's Talk. I did a ton of work with Bell Let's Talk when I was at Twitter. Again, that's a for those that don't know what Bell Let's Talk is, it's a mental health initiative that Bell puts forward every single year, and they would make a donation for everybody that tweeted out the hashtag Bell Let's Talk, and we did a lot of really cool things to bring that to life, and donate a ton of money for mental health awareness.
Your favorite movie?
Uh, I'm a big comedy guy, so I'm gonna go with like Ace Ventura or Dumb and Dumber.
Those were both great films. Back when comedy was unapologetically funny.
Yes.
Okay, if Hollywood were to make a movie based on your life story, who would you want to play you?
Jason Sudeikis.
And if Hollywood made this movie, what would you call it?
As somebody that's in sales, I would call it the fast and the curious.
I like that. You should trademark it before someone takes that. That is a really good line. Your favorite book?
I've got a 7-year-old and a 4.5-year-old. So I read a lot of children's books right now, but my son and I read the Guinness Book of World Records every night. So that's my favorite book right now.
Is there a particular record that your son likes?
Oh, he actually has me ask my phone. We ask either AI or I ask Siri to pick a number between 1 and 255, and then that's the page that we read. And we do that about 5 times before Dad says it's time to put the book down.
Nice. That's adorable. Okay, your favorite song?
Big country fan, so Whiskey Glasses, Morgan Wallen. That was a banger 5, 6 years ago. It's still great today.
The best advice you have ever received?
On becoming a father, your presence is the best present that you can give.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self advice, what would you say?
I would say that it's not as important as you thought it was.
And if you weren't in media and marketing, what would you be doing and why?
I think we got to go full circle here. I would be next to James Duthie at the Masters as a broadcaster.
All right, and we're going to end things right here. Justin, thank you so much for stopping by today.
Thanks, Victor.